men down, bullies, blow the men down.
Give me way, blow the men down.
Blow the men down, bullies.
I'm Paul Bennett at Downeast Thunder Creations here in Millbridge, Maine. We're located along Maine's Bold Coast, not very far from the U.S.-Canadian border. This is a dresser that's been in my family for quite a few years, but I wouldn't exactly call it an antique. It was purchased used. Well, we used it for quite a few years. We had it on Cape Cod for quite a while. And we don't need it anymore. My wife found another piece that works better, and the drawers were starting to fall apart, and I could repair it. The only reason the drawers were starting to come apart is because a lot of the slides and so forth, the old glue that was originally used, it just dries out and it starts coming apart. So it is repairable, but we don't have a need for it. This kind of thing would not bring much money on the used furniture market. So I'm going to disassemble it and repurpose the wood, because it's made out of, most of it's all solid maple. Of course, it's well seasoned, and there aren't any checks, and it's dimensionally stable. It looks in good shape. So I'm just going to disassemble everything, put the wood into inventory, and I'll have this material to use on future projects. And these draw pulls my wife wants to keep. She wants to put them on another piece of furniture, so I'm going to take those off and put them aside and give them to her. The rest of it's just disassembly, because of course here at Downeast Thunder Farm we don't waste anything. We save everything. We repurpose it or recycle it or rebuild it or whatever it takes. So this may take the form of another piece of furniture, or it might be part of the interior of my new boat that I'm building. Who knows? Some of the wood might go to some decorative projects for Christmas. This is just another example of what we do here. I'm going to use my industrial heat gun, and I'm going to start applying heat to the joints. These are called either box joints or finger joints, and I want to separate them, and sometimes the heat will help either soften, loosen up the glue, or just help things come apart a little bit. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm only going to use the number 1 setting. Number 2 gets too hot. I don't want to cook the wood or scorch it. And the heat comes on pretty fast. You don't have to wait long. But if I warm it up, I think it'll come apart just a little bit easier. I'm going to use my wooden mallet to help coax it. Now, this method doesn't always work, but it has worked fairly well most of the time in the past that I've used it. Here's my wood mallet. That end's coming right apart. I want to put a little more heat on this end. Beautiful. It came right off, and it didn't hurt the wood. It didn't break any of the fingers. They're going to get cut off anyway, but it didn't really do any damage, so it's a good method to use. I just have to do this other end, but it's just a repeat of what I just did. This end came off just like the other one. No problem, no damage, very easy. This is just a plywood bottom. I don't believe they used any glue. Yep, pops right off. Okay. Now the other drawers will be disassembled just like this one. This plywood, it's very thin, very old. It's not much good for anything, but I'm going to save it anyway, because if you've ever seen me make templates and patterns from when I want to fit something, this plywood will come in handy just for that purpose. And so once again, I don't have to go out and buy more materials. I'll just use what I have. Now I want to take the back off, the carcass here. This is just a very thin, cheap plywood. I thought it was masonite at first. When I looked a little closer, it's actually plywood. It looks like it's just tacked on, so it shouldn't be hard to get it off. So I'm just going to work this all the way around until I get it off. Now that I have the backing off, that plywood piece I took, I went and I removed all the nails. And sometimes it helps when you're starting to disassemble a piece of furniture. Just don't start having at it and bashing on it and all that. You might want to turn it around, turn it different ways and look at it. See if you can figure out how it was actually assembled, or how was this put together. Right here, I see some flathead wood screws on this side. It's a little different on the other side. I see there are only nails coming in here to this cleat. The other ones fell off, so I already pretty much know what they look like anyway. And if you take your time, well, that popped right off. What happens is you do less damage and you're going to have more usable wood. So you're trying to take this apart with it doing as least amount of damage as you possibly can. So now I got to figure out how these went in. And so you look for little telltale signs. Is there a screw or a nail going in at an angle, or, you know, here's something here. So that's what I'm looking for. On the front side, I can see there's a little finish nail right here. This also looks like a little cap, wood cap, so there might be a wood screw behind there, or this might be just decorative. I don't know. But what I'll do is I'll take a small wood chisel and I'll see if I can pop that off. If it is a button, I should be able to pop it out, and it probably reveals a screw underneath. Although this is pretty thin, so it may not. So the idea is I just have to try to figure this out. Actually, I don't even have to do that. It was enough. I noticed that it would wiggle a little bit, and this is just a very thin piece of wood, so that was just decorative. So I don't even have to dig it now. That's easy. And just ease it out. There we go. Alright, that reveals wood screws here. I knew there had to be something more sturdy holding this top on. The flathead wood screws, there's 3 of them on this side, 3 on the other. That will allow me to take the top off, and then the rest is figuring out how to disassemble these frame pieces so that I can reuse that wood as well. I hate these old flathead wood screws. But back in the day, that was pretty much all they had. Only a few more to go. I have the wood screws all out now. I can now lift this off. I can take this out. I'm going to set this aside for now, and I'll keep working on disassembling the framework. So looking a little bit closer at some of this framework, you notice that I couldn't find anything on the back side. I didn't see anything at an angle or anything here holding it in. And at first I thought they might have just put this together with dowels so this could be popped apart. But upon closer examination, I noticed that there's a small nail here, a small nail there. There isn't one here, so that might be doweled. On the far end, let me see if I can show you. On the far end, that one right there, I'm going to pick up the camera, the tripod, and move it around a little bit. There's a nail right there on the very end. And I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's one right there. To get these nails out, you can see this tool I'm using. It's not very expensive. This one's made by Stanley. And it has a bevel ground on it, so it's a little bit sharp. And you have to get it underneath that nail head. A few taps of the hammer. You are digging into the wood, so there is a little bit of damage being done to that wood, but it's minimal. It's not that much. Just get it under the head and then just try to gently pry. And this isn't going to get the nail out, but it lifts the head. It lifts the head far enough where you can take your claw hammer and get behind it and then yank it out. And there's the nail right there. So there's just a slight amount of damage to the wood, but it's very minor. You can hardly notice it. And that might get trimmed off anyway, I don't know. If it was something that was going to show, I could easily fill it and you'd probably never notice it. You just have to do the other side. A couple more really nice pieces of wood here. So there you have it. There's the dresser all disassembled, all of the wood saved, and most of it came apart with very minimal damage to the wood. So that's going to give me a much higher yield when I go to use this wood in other projects.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor?